Okay, it is time. We will go ahead and call to order this joint meeting of the Owasso City Council, Owasso Public Works Authority, and Owasso Public Golf Authority. It is so good to be back here in person and see everybody's smiling faces. Glad everybody is healthy. Item number 2 is an invocation from City Manager Warren Lear. Item number 3 will be a flag salute by Vice Mayor Bill Mush.
Thank you, Mayor. If you would pray with me. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your blessings. We thank you for some relief. We pray for those that don't have relief, for the cities and countries that are still struggling with the virus. Father, we pray for healthcare workers and first responders and hospital workers everywhere that are needing endurance right now. And but Father, we thank you for your blessings on our community, and pray that you give us wisdom this evening and guide us as we move through this season. Help us to be cautious but not fearful, and we will give you the praise, Father. We pray in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Vice Mayor Bush. Item number 4 is roll call. Roll call.
Mayor Chris Kelly.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bill Bush.
Here.
Councilor Doug Bonebrake.
Here.
Councilor Lyndall Dunn.
Here.
Councilor Kelly Lewis.
Item number 5 is presentation of the character trait of flexibility presented by Miss Michelle Dempster. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. While our youngest son was serving in the Marines, a phrase I would often see in parent Facebook groups and comments of seasoned Marine parents was Semper Gumby. If you aren't familiar with Gumby, he was a clay animation character that was first introduced on the Howdy Doody show in the late 50s. And Semper Gumby translates to always flexible. The City of Owasso has had a personal focus on the character for 18 years now, and I can't remember how many times someone has made the comment that the trait they introduced fell at the perfect time, which translated to mean that particular trait was very applicable to the situations in their life at that moment or the challenges they were facing. For the first time, though, it feels like we have all been in the same training over the last few months. For June's character trait of flexibility. Strata leadership defines flexibility as adjusting to change with a good attitude. This definition goes above and beyond Semper Gumby, or always flexible motto. This definition reminds us that properly exhibited, the character trait of flexibility requires adjusting with a good attitude. What makes it hard to live out this definition? 1, change is change, and change can be difficult. Back a few years ago, when City Hall moved from its previous location to its current location, this became my frequent response as we transitioned to our 76th and Main location. Even positive change can still be challenging. Our families, our department, our community, our world is made up of individuals with different personalities, different life experiences, and varying abilities to adapt and embrace change. For some, change may be easy. For others, it's added pressure and tension. We can build on the character trait of flexibility by looking at how we personally view and adapt to change. For me, changing my workspace doesn't present much of a challenge. Give me a spot to work and I'm happy. But cancel my vacation plans, or really any plans I've made, becomes more of a challenge for me. Whereas someone else may just shrug and say, it's all good, and immediately start planning their next vacation. When reflecting on the character trait of flexibility, it is important to recognize that not everyone is going to respond to any given situation the same way as me. But with honest self-reflection, we can recognize circumstances and situations in which others may exhibit even more flexibility than we do. Adjusting is another key word to the definition of flexibility. As I think about the character trait of flexibility and reflect on what part of flexibility I find most challenging, adjusting is my pitfall. I like to plan ahead, I like to have a plan, and I like to feel like I am in control of that plan. And these things aren't necessarily bad attributes, but out of balance, they can make adjusting to a change in plans challenging. As a society, the changes everyone has been going through in the last few months has been easy for some and more challenging for others. I will admit most days the changes occurring over the last few months have been challenging to me. A simple example is typically April, May, and June are spent preparing, planning, and conducting our open enrollment period for our employees with a health and benefits fair kickoff in May. This year in March and April, we were in a wait-and-see mode. In early May, we came up with an idea that would bring in the key insurance providers and allow for social distancing. And as we began to iron out those details, we found out the carriers weren't allowing their representatives to travel even from Tulsa or Oklahoma City. And once again, we adapt and adjust and develop a new plan, just as businesses and families around the world have been doing for the last several months. Lastly, but probably the most important, is with a good attitude. This reminds me of a couple of profound sayings I've heard from elementary school teachers over the years. You get what you get and you don't throw a fit, and no drama llama. Sometimes the simple is profound. Flexibility without a good attitude is not true flexibility. Sometimes we get what we get, and it's up to decide it is up to us to decide if we throw a fit. It is up to us to decide how much drama we personally stir up. Change can be hard, change can be difficult. However, change can be easier and less difficult when we learn to recognize in ourselves what part of change is most challenging to us and purposefully retrain our reactions to those situations. The character trait of flexibility doesn't mean we'll look forward to vacations being canceled, but it does mean we are able to take change, whatever it may be, in stride and not negatively impact ourselves and those around us.
Thank you, Michelle. Great words. Item number 6 is consideration and appropriate action relating to a request for approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Move we approve.
And I'll second.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mr. Bumbrick,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes. Item number 8 is a public hearing, and Warren Lear has this item.
Thank you, Mayor. As we're aware, it's budget time again, and tonight is the time set aside for a public hearing. You've heard me do this presentation. I'm going to introduce our Finance Director, Linda Jones, who will walk through a little different presentation than we saw last time with a few more details. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Linda.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me now? Okay. At the public hearing, we like to provide some general data so that any community members that are here or listening or watching knows what's going on and what's being recommended in the city. So that being said, we'll have a few slides talking about the city in general. It'll be information that council is well aware of, but there may be others that aren't. And one of the things that we like to inform people on is that about 58% of our budget comes from taxes. And as council is well aware, most of our taxes are sales tax, but we also get use tax from out-of-state purchases, like through Amazon, and franchise tax from the utilities, and hotel tax, and a little bit of ad valorem for judgments, and now our TIF district. The second largest source of revenue for the city is charges for services. And again, one of the things people may not know is that the large majority of that has to do with utility services, the water, stormwater, trash, sewer for our citizens, and that's a large part of that. So those revenues flow through the city as well. There's also ambulance service. We provide that for our citizens. Not all cities do that, but we do here. So that is the bulk of ours. And you'll see there some proceeds of debt. That's going to vary from year to year. As you know, council approved some new debt issuance, and so some of that was built into this budget. Some was already in the budget, and then the balance was in this next year. And then these are the numbers behind that chart. And if you look at the changes in each of those categories, I'll point out the significant ones. There's actually an increase in the budget for taxes. That primarily is a result of the increased collections on the out-of-state purchases on that use tax that we talked about earlier. That has been a significant increased source of revenue. This year, up about 33%. I mean, it's a big growing source of revenue. So that's a good thing for us. We're fortunate that we're collecting that now when just a few years ago we weren't. There is a decrease there for intergovernmental, and that has to do with the SAFER grant, which was a multi-year grant where the amount funded by the grant goes down over time. It was 75% and it's dropping to 35%. So that's reflected here. That was anticipated and planned for. So it isn't a surprise. We knew that was going to happen. We were happy for the years we received the higher amount, but we did anticipate that and plan for that. The charges for services, that's primarily related to the 5-year rate plan the council adopted on water, sewer, trash, stormwater, wastewater. So that again was anticipated and planned for, and that helps cover the fixed cost increases for staff and other price increases and capital improvements. So the proceeds of debt, as you see, that looks like a $17 million decrease. In reality, proceeds of debt are one-time revenue sources, so there's going to be volatility from year to year. Last year, we had the financing of the wastewater treatment plant and some other major capital projects related to wastewater. This year, we had the financing of the capital improvements street projects. So we had built $7 million into this year's budget, and that's the balance. We financed $12 million, so we already had $7 million we built in for this year. We're starting to spend it now that we purchased the land with those proceeds, for instance. And then that $5 million is the balance of that loan. So that's significant, and I wanted to point that out for you. Miscellaneous, the major piece of that this year was the land purchase. The decrease is really primarily related to reduced interest rates. So we built that into the budget. As we mentioned earlier on this tax revenues, sales tax is our largest source. And you can see here with the red bars and the blue one. The blue one's budget, the red is actual or projected actual for 20. You can see that it was a growing source, and you'll see it something a little different this year with 20 and 21 looking flatter, and that's not going to be a surprise for you because of the impact of the COVID virus. So you're seeing that reflected there in that projected 20 and 21. And then the next largest one is the use tax, the green. And while it's growing significantly, you can see that green bar is tiny compared to the sales tax. So when you hear in the press how much use tax is up, it is significant. It's just in relation to sales tax, it's not as big. If you look at what kind of sales tax or what the sources of our sales tax are, as you would expect, the largest is by far retail trade. And if you look at Owasso, and probably a lot of communities, a large source of your retail trade are for groceries. When you think about your household income, where do you spend a large segment of your income? You spend it at the grocery store because everybody has to eat. So I know when I came here, coming from a different industry, I was kind of surprised at how much went to groceries till I thought about it, and I realized, oh, yep, we're all buying groceries. So you'll see that here, as well as other, of course, retail like apparel and whatnot in your retail. But if you look at the red bar, that's accommodations and food services. So your restaurants fall in there, and you can see people eat out they do, it's a significant source, but it's not as much as our other retail. And as council knows, you know, when the restaurants were closed, there would be a significant impact to us. And this kind of puts it in proportion as to what percentage that is of that total. So, and then looking at the budget that we built for this next year, if you compare budget to budget, what we built it on a year ago versus what we built it on this year, we're building in about a 0.5% decrease in sales tax. That may sound small, but if you think about it, we were running over 4% ahead this year. So if you compare that to what we would have built our budget on without the impact of the COVID virus, we would have reflected that 4.7% increase we had realized already this year before the virus, plus another 2% increase for the next year, because that's the trajectory we were on. So when we built this budget based on a decrease, we're removing the increase that we already realized by the time we were impacted, and then going down from that point for next year. So in reality, it's about a $1.2 million impact to next year's budget on that sales tax piece. If you look at use tax, we built in that 24% increase budget to budget. That's significant money, still over $500,000. And if you look at the hotel tax, that's probably the one that's hardest to predict as far as will people travel and when will they start traveling. So we built in a significant decrease at the recommendation of OEDA. We reduced it even more than initially put in the budget that you last saw. We went even more conservative, but in that fund, we don't budget to spend all the revenue anyway. So it didn't impact the expenditure budget we presented. It's just we reflected that potentially lower revenue stream, so that when you look at the bigger budget book, you'll see a more conservative projected fund balance in that fund. So as far as hotel tax, we know we're getting a significant impact right now. I looked at this last month, it was down 55% from a year ago. But we expect that to turn around. It's just to which degree and when. So that's in there. If you look at our sales tax piece, again, the citizens may not remember, but I want to point out that we have 4.05% sales tax in Owasso. 2 cents is for our general fund. So that provides our regular operational funding. We have, and that's in blue. If you look at the yellow, we have a 55-100s, which was the vision recapture, which is strictly for street projects on 96th Street and 116th Street. So that's very limited in use. The red is the 1 cent that's been there for a number of years for other capital projects. It will be other street projects as well as when we constructed this fire station and other capital things, and park improvements. Those come out of that 1 penny. And then the green segments relate to the half penny, which was again very specifically restricted to police fire streets, and that street segment has been used for street rehabilitation. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And if you look on this slide at how we spend our money, then you know a significant portion goes to public safety, over 30%, and public safety is going to be your police, fire, ambulance in that segment. Public works, you're going to have your streets, that kind of thing at public works. And then utilities, the thing that I'd like to remind people here is that, again, as we're providing water, sewer, stormwater, that shows up here as utilities. It's not our purchase of utilities, it's the utilities for the citizens that live here. And then you can see, again, that debt service, it's about 11.8% of our budget. That's very manageable. A lot of cities have much higher debt obligations than we do, so we are fortunate to only have that portion that comes off the top. This shows the numbers behind that chart, and so you can see where we had change about $1 million more for public safety, about $1 million more for public works. The utility reduction, that's because of that financing we talked about. We had that construction of the treatment plant that was in there last year, and that's not in there this year, those other projects. So that shows as a decrease, but again, those were one-time costs. And then you have some increases to culture and recreation. So a lot of that is related to the improvements at the sports park. We like to point out, especially in times like this, that we have a healthy fund balance. You know, when you have a revenue stream like sales tax that can be volatile, when unemployment is volatile or when other factors cause people to spend less money, then it is always a good practice to have a healthy fund balance to help offset any volatility that you don't have control over. And with Oklahoma being reliant primarily on sales tax for public safety and other city operations, it's important to be able to ensure continued operations. So in this chart, you can see our target, which is kind of our minimum of 15% in green. And then you can see the original budget where we budgeted to be in red, and then the blue where we actually ended up. And we've been fortunate, after we got past the recession, the last one, then our revenues have been exceeding our budget. And so you'll see the blue line is significantly higher than what it was budgeted, and that's because sales tax keeps coming in higher, and we've been fortunate to have a healthy fund balance due to that fact. If you look at our spending this year, you know, what is significant in the way of our cost increases, and the biggest one has to do with salary benefit increases. It's not so much salary this year. We did have 2.75% that was contractually negotiated for fire when we did a 2-year contract last year. We also had some schedule movement costs related to police and fire primarily that was through their contract. When they get another year of service, they move on the schedule. We also had costs related to the fact that we give, in many cases, our raises on anniversary date, so mid-year. So this year we could have somebody that gets a raise January 1, and this budget only has half a year's salary increase in it, whereas next year you'll have the full impact of that salary. So those are our fixed salary increases that get covered. And benefits, when the salary goes up, the related pension goes up, the related social security taxes go up, and those other things tied, as well as health, dental, and vision insurance that goes with that. If you look at the other major cost increase in this budget, you're going to see that debt service increase that's related to the financing that the council just approved a couple months ago for that $12 million financing for the land and the street projects. If you look at our street projects and what's included and what's still on the plan, then you have the Garnett widening from 96 to 116th, the 76th Street widening with people can see going on right now, and then intersections at 106th and 129th, 106th and 145th, and 116th and 129th East Avenue. Much of that on there are projects that are already in process. I think they're all in process. It's one stage or another. And so we'll have major construction projects like this last multiple years. So if you look at the vision recapture sales tax, again, these are multiple year projects. That's what is being funded with the 55-100 sales tax. And so they're all projects on 96th Street or 116th Street. And those continue to move along and are included in the budget as we move to each subsequent phase of the project. Looking at street rehabilitation, you can see here on this chart when we increased our funding of street rehabilitation, we went to $1 million in 2014 and went on up to $1.8 million with the passage of the halfpenny in 2017. Then this budget continues that effort to keep it at that $1.8 million level that we've been now for the last 5 years. If you look at the street budget altogether, here you can see the street rehabilitation as well as other costs built in, such as street lighting and traffic control maintenance, crack sealant, and some striping and some other capital like the hydraulic spreader and plow and bridge repair and the traffic calming program. If we look at the third penny stormwater projects, these again have been going on for a number of years, and these are carryover funds. They're actually part of that was financed with an earlier financing, so those will continue to proceed and hopefully finish this next year. And then public safety, the third penny has budgeted for a fire engine for the fire department. Ambulance capital has budgeted an ambulance remount and a power lift cot. The community development block grant, we have $134,000 budgeted each in the grant and in our public works authority. Unfortunately, we don't get enough with the block grant to do all that we need to do, and so we've been subsidizing that effort. We're happy that we get some federal funds, and we're leveraging those with our own money so that we can do more. In the Public Works Authority, we have a number of items that we went over at the work session, and you can see those listed here. And then again, in works, these were the projects that were funded last year that are still in works: the treatment plant, the Coffee Creek lift station, the Market Gravity Sewer Line, and the Ranch Creek interceptor. And then in this budget, we have some funding for the Elm Creek Park Bank Stabilization Project, as well as continuation of the projects that have been on the table for the sports park, including the splash pad, playground equipment upgrade at Fantastic Island, the 5K trail, and access roads. As far as staffing, we had very little included in this budget for additional staffing. We do have one fleet maintenance technician at the city garage, which we've needed for some time, and we have in this budget an increase of assistant golf pro from part-time to full-time. As I mentioned earlier, we have the 15% reserve. That's our goal for the general fund balance that we have budgeted to well exceed. And we also have a goal that we've had for a number of years on reducing the deficit at the at the Bailey Ranch Golf Course. And I have a chart on that here where you can see our plan. The lower line shows our plan that we took to council and you approved, and the green bar shows that we've, as money has been available, we've put additional funds towards that deficit because we're trying to pay it off early. On this, at this rate, we would pay it off 3 years earlier than the original This budget's been built on on some assumptions. One is that continuation of the 5-year utility rate plan. This would be the last year of the plan previously approved by council. And then also the commitment to the transfers to reduce the golf deficit and subsidize the golf operations. This chart shows the obligation for debt service payments, and it reflects the additional $1 million related to the $12 million financing for streets that was recently approved by council. And you can see here when it pays off and how much. The bottom one, which goes up so far, is primarily due to the treatment plant, which has a long useful life. The next steps in the process would be the budget adoption on June 16th, and then we're required to file that budget with the state auditor by July 31st. So I would be happy to answer any questions and turn it back for the conduction of the public hearing.
All right, thank you, Linda. Great presentation. As I look around the room, I don't see any citizens here that would comment on this item at this stage. I'm assuming we don't have any that we asked for online at this point. Okay. Well, at this stage, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing, just as a formality, and give it a few seconds. I don't see anybody here, so. With that, we'll close the hearing. Thank you, Linda. Great presentation. Okay, we'll move on to item number 9, consideration and appropriate action relating to the acquisition of right-of-way and easement for the East 116th Street North from Mingo to Garnett Road roadway improvement project. Mr. Stevens has this item. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. The item I bring before you this evening is a request to authorize payment for 16,838.40 square feet of right-of-way and 3,601.50 square feet of permanent easement for the East 116th Street North Winding project from Mingo to North Garnett Road. The right-of-way in need is currently owned by Dell Baker, located at 11607 North 101st East Avenue. The offer for right-of-way is $3 per square foot for a purchase price of $50,515.20. In addition to the right-of-way cost, the compensation for easement and damages in the amount of $9,902.25 is included, for a total offer of $60,417.45. Funding for the purchase is available in the project budget from the Vision Recapture Fund. With this information in mind, staff recommends authorization for payment in the amount of $60,417.45 to Dale W. Baker for the acquisition of right-of-way, easement, and damages located at 11607 North 101st East Avenue. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Roger. Heather, anybody trying to speak on this?
No, sir.
Questions or comments from the council?
What do we like now as far as this leg from Mingo to Garnett, as far as your?
Two parcels. One is on my desk. We just got signed Monday, yesterday. The other, we're just waiting on a partial lien release, and then we will have that section.
Terrific. That's good news.
Yes, sir.
I'll move we approve.
Second.
Mr. Bumbrick,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes. Thank you, Roger. Item number 10 is a report from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and our Public Works Director, Roger Stevens, will bring a project status report.
Thank you, sir. As you will see, we've got a new look. This is actually a presentation through our GIS system. And before I begin the report, I just need to say a special thank you to our GIS expert, which is Shelley Mount. She came on board about extraordinary job. She works directly underneath our IT director, Teresa Wilson. And this is just one of many projects that she has been working on and helping us out with. So, you know, we've been utilizing the same old PowerPoint list presentation now for probably at least 10 to 12 years. So it's good to have a new look, so to speak. So also this is going to give us a lot more options. We're going to be able to have video. We do some drone video of the projects. We're able to play that for you. So it's going to be, I think, really neat what we can do to expand on this. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin. Begin with our first project, which is East 76th Street North, widening from 169 to North 129th East Avenue. The contractor is currently still relocating the water line as well as installing the stormwater improvements from 117th to North 119th East Avenue. And as you can see, especially this lower section about where the cursor is back to the east, they are stabilized at the base there. They're installing the rock now, and if the weather will cooperate, we could have some concrete in place there here in the next probably 10 to 14 days. So a lot of progress with this project. Just about all the underground utilities, with the exception of the stormwater, there's still a lot of work there, but the water and sewer is just about complete. So contractors done very well. Something I do, it is important to mention is with this last month, with the amount of rain days that we have had, the contractor is stating they're about 30 days behind. Now, if we get some good weather, they can make that 30 days up. So at this time, I'm not going to change the completion date. We'll see how they progress. If it does look like they're going to be 30 days behind or longer, then I will make that change on the status report. Next project is the Garnett widening from 96th to 106th Street North. What you're seeing here is a temporary lane that's been installed there on the east side of Garnett that will eventually switch traffic over as they did on 76th Street to begin the roadway, preparing the roadway base. The contractor as well, if you move back to the north, and I'll see if I can back up here. Back to the north here is where the major bridge structure that will be installed. They built a shoe fly around that structure, temporary access, a temporary road, same thing as a shoe fly, but in any event, that will allow them to tear that old structure out and build a new structure and still have traffic in both directions at all times. So good progress there. The 12-inch water line, relocation is complete, and the contractor is now beginning to relocate the 24-inch. There is a section of 24-inch water line that has to be relocated as well, and they should be starting that up this week. This project is also about 30 days behind due to all the rain we had in May. But again, this contractor has mentioned they'll do everything they can to try to make up that time if the weather allows. Maybe north 1 mile. Kind of like where we're at and where we've been. Okay, we're right here. Any of the it's really not much progress here. We're just kind of waiting on the federal government to open back courts so we can go to court over this one particular issue that we have with Peace Fight. Once we get that, then we can move forward with utility relocation. 106th and 145th intersection improvements. The utility relocation is wrapping up. We should be finished actually this week. Cox is just removing the lines off their poles, and then AEP will be out, and PVC will be out to relocate or take out their poles, the existing poles. anticipate this project being advertised this month in June with a bid opening in July. So with that schedule in mind, we anticipate having our construction commencing in August of this year. Next is 116th and North 129th East Avenue. We're actually going to have a pre-construction meeting this Thursday with the contractor and with ODOT. And we anticipate construction starting in late June or early July this year. The Central Park Lake Ridge channel, drainage channel improvements. Finally, I think we got to a point with all the property owners where everybody's in agreement what needs to be accomplished here in their backyards, and make sure that we restore any trees that may be damaged. So we believe we're there now. So we're moving forward with advertisement in June. We should have a bid to bring before council in July for a possible award. So with that being said, hopefully we'll have this project under construction by August of this year. Raila Park, Trib A5, Raila Park and Trib 5A stormwater improvements. The Trib 5A stormwater improvements is now complete. However, the Raila Park, it's something we have talked about, but it's more than likely this project is something we're gonna wait probably a year or two before we move forward with that project. Funding wise, we need to build up some funding in the stormwater fund to make that happen. So I will be taking this project off the list. I'll bring it back to the council once we're ready to move forward with the design of that detention facility. So just a heads up, more than anything, that you won't see this on the list next month. Sports Park regional detention improvements and mitigation project. The image here is the big concrete boxes, RCV boxes, that are going underneath the access road into the southern portion of the sports park. Those were installed last week. Our goal is to get them in prior to the weekend, because there was a big softball tournament at our sports park. They did accomplish that. They had them all installed and the road back open Thursday evening, so everything worked out very well. Contractor is also still working on the mitigation side. They're basically installing the overflow cells now. Next is East 116th Street North and Mingo improvements, as well as improvements from Mingo to Garnett. Still in the right of way. We just talked about this a second ago. Got a couple parcels left, but one I'll be bringing before council at the next council meeting, and one hopefully we'll have ready to go to council in July. Once we get there, then we can move forward with utility relocation. Moving to a mile back to the east, 116th Street North, the Garnett intersection improvements, as well as the improvements on 116th from Garnett to 129th. The land acquisition on 116th itself, not including the intersection, we have one that we're waiting on a partial lien. Actually, I'm sorry, we have two that we're still waiting on a partial lien release. One other that we've already brought before council that was agreed upon by the property owner has come back and said they want more money. So we're working with that property owner now to try to address that, and hopefully we can move forward with the agreement in hand that this particular property owner had signed. So any event, we're gonna keep working on this until we get it, and, so we can move forward with utility relocation. The intersection at 116th and Garnett, land acquisition, we anticipate, and then this has been kind of a moving target here, but we've pushed this back to August of 2020, just knowing what challenges that we have before us at this intersection in reference to right-of-way. Next is 116th improvements. There we go. From 129th to 135th East Avenue, contractor is relocating the Washington County Rural Water District water line, installing stormwater. They're also installing a shoe fly here as well, so they can take out the old stormwater structure and then install the new structure. Also, they're already starting to cut some of the road in where the new road will be. So the contractor is making a lot of progress so far on this. This actually is the same contractor that's on East 76th Street, and the same contractor that will be performing the improvements at 116th and 120th. So this project is on schedule. 96th Street improvements, from basically around 119th to 129th. Still in the beginning stage of land acquisition. We have actually met with a lot of the property owners along this corridor. Many discussions, a lot of questions. We've been answering those questions. I would assume here very, very soon very quickly we'll be able to come to an agreement on some of these parcels for the right of way. Good discussion, very good discussion with all the concerns. Wastewater treatment plant improvements. The engineering consultant has addressed all the comments from DEQ. We anticipate getting the permit by the construction permit by the end of this month. If so, we'll have this project out to bid in July with a bid opening in August. Coffee Creek Lift Station. The sanitary sewer project, we anticipate this being advertised this month with a proposed bid award in July. So a lot of projects that are getting ready to, are in the advertisement mode or getting ready to be advertised. 106th and 129th, East 106th Street North and North 129th intersection improvements. As I've mentioned, it typically takes about a year to get the environmental complete. ODOT is doing the environmental this go around. Recently, we've been informed that it could be as early as July. The environmental could be complete rather than November of 2020. So that's definitely some good news. If so, we can proceed with land acquisition at that time. FY19 street rehabilitation program. This is the image there on 76th Street, the asphalt overlay with the new striping that was just recently performed. All of the asphalt, all of the road work is complete with this rehabilitation project. There is some punch list items that still need to be performed. So once those are complete, we anticipate having this project before council for final pay and final acceptance. East 96th Street drainage improvements, with the exception of one inlet, storm inlet, we're waiting on. This project is complete. All the improvements are done. So we're happy with the turnout, and based on the recent rains that we have had, it's functioned very well. Before Before I open up to questions, just to, you may have heard that I'm going to be taking a few projects off. Don't worry, I'm getting ready to add 4 more. Next month, just for your knowledge, I'll be adding the Hell Acre Sewer, the Phase 2 Hell Acre Sewer improvements, as well as the Smith Farm sewer line improvements, the Elm Creek bank stabilization improvements, and lastly, the FY20 street rehabilitation program. Those will all be added to this list, and because they're getting very close to the point where we'll be talking about construction. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Roger, on the Railroad Park, I'm just looking ahead here. What do you anticipate that project to look like with the mitigation when you bring it to us?
Well, hopefully we won't have to do any mitigation with the Railroad Park because it's ball fields right now. It would be an overflow from basically the water would come in and go out just when a major storm event, flash flood event. So it'd be the fields would still be there. It's just we're going to take out a lot of dirt and just be basically an overflow basin from the creek. It would detain and then flow and then slowly re-released out. So based on what's there, I don't see any issues with environmental issues such as wetlands or anything like that. So it should just be a detention project, not a mitigation.
Okay, thank you.
On your, you got a couple, like on the 106th Street and the 145th intersection and the Central Lake Ridge, both of them commencing in August of this year, hopefully. How long do you think those projects will take? You probably told us before, but
106th and 145th will take approximately 6 months. The stormwater improvements in Central Park, probably around 4 months is what that project is.
and then I asked the other question. I was wondering how is that going to look as far as the detention, where that's going. And then the other, as far as the right-of-way on 96th Street, is there a reason, not 96, but yes, 96. Is that because you're dealing with corporations as far as why that's taken a year as opposed to just somebody's house?
Yeah, it's a little more challenging. There's a lot, majority of the people that you talk to are out of state. It made it even a little more difficult with the COVID that's going on. So, but it is a little more challenging just to find the right person to talk to with these bigger corporations. But we have found who to talk to, and this discussion's been going very well. Like I said, there's a lot of questions. Just for example, with you moving the street closer to our building, or what are you going to do about our setback? And well, we're not going to require you to move the building. In fact, we will grandfather you in. There's not going to be an issue with setback. So Brian Dimsher is going to help us out there with providing them a letter that's not going to be an issue from the city standpoint. So there are many questions about the project itself. If they're going to be required, we take away some of their green space. How are they going to handle the landscaping requirements? Again, it's something that we're not going to require them to create more green space for that sole purpose. It's something we're not requiring them to do.
And then the last one, and I was glad you said that it looks like that the EPA study is going to be quick. That 106th, 129th is just a nightmare, and it doesn't have school's not even in session now, and it's still a nightmare. So anything we can do to get that thing expedited, or if it can be moved up, but I realize EPA we're at the hands of the federal government until they decide, okay, here's what we'll let you do. But yeah, anything we can do on that corner would be awesome.
The biggest delay we typically, as you're well aware, is the environmental, and this depends how well negotiations go with right-of-way attainment. Right-of-way attainment can be 3 months, like 106th and Garnett, just 3 months. That's the fastest we have got all the right-of-way for the project on an intersection.
And would that be 4 or 5 parcels that we're going to have? Once, I mean, obviously we have to wait, but is there just 4 or 5 parcels that we're going to have to worry about on that?
On 106th and 129th, I
Love the new presentation format.
Yeah, this is great.
Just when I thought you couldn't look any smarter.
Well, again, I have to give all the thanks to Shelley now. She's the one that's making me look smart, so
Looks great.
thank you.
And if there are no other questions, just a few items and dates. The Owasso Economic Summit will be a free Zoom webinar this year, next Thursday, June 11th at noon. So that's something that all citizens and business owners might want to take part in. You can register for that on the city's website. The first gathering on Main this year will take place on July 2nd. It's being planned right now, and along with that, a grand opening for Redbud Park will be that evening, and we are tentatively making plans, barring some significant change, making plans for a July 4th, Saturday, July 4th, Red, White, and Boom. As we've had in the past, certainly believe that viewing fireworks offers plenty of opportunity for family gathering and social distancing. So looking forward to that. A couple of other items. Yesterday, June 1, the museum and the community center reopened with cautions in place, obviously. And court resumed, the Owasso Municipal Court resumed on May 21, with also new restrictions and guidelines. Another item, the city will resume utility payment policy procedures having to do with late charges and cutoffs beginning July 1. This is a month later than most of our fellow communities are doing it, but so we felt like it was it's kind of how we do business, the right thing to do to extend a little bit more grace. But we will resume normal procedures beginning July 1. Most communities have already resumed those. And then I've saved the best news for last. After 10 years of pursuing COPS grants, we were notified today that we are receiving $750,000 in the form of a COPS grant for 6 officers. This is similar to the SAFER grant where there's a commitment. We don't have all the details yet, we just found out, but I believe the commitment is similar to the SAFER grant, 25% in the first year, and then it escalates in years 2 and 3. I think it's a 3-year program, but we'll get more details and get with Ms. Jones and work out the planning on that. But very excited to get a $750,000 grant for hiring police officers that we know that we're going to hire. So that's great news. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Warren. Item number 11 is report from the city attorney.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Item 12 is report from city council. Well, I think it's a good time to point out, or at least lift up our police department. It seems like every couple of years, an incident happens, and as with anything, one bad individual doesn't always kind of shed a bad light on an entire group of people. And it seems like every time we have something like this happen with a police officer, it seems like the whole police force gets blamed for that all across the country. And I just want to reiterate, as we do often, and everybody here knows, we've got an unbelievable police department. It's got the utmost morals and ethics, and can't be more proud of what they do on a day-to-day basis. So here's to keeping up what you're doing, and hopefully this passes over quickly for you guys. Okay, item number 13 is official notices to the council. We are in receipt of these documents. Item 14 is new business. So a little change tonight. Normally we would move to adjournment at this point, but for our viewers that are watching on YouTube, our next item is going to be an executive session that will keep us behind closed doors for probably anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. So we're going to turn off the broadcast at this point, continue the audio, and when we come back, we'll finish out the meeting in audio. So with that, item number 15 is consideration and appropriate action relating to request for an executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters relating to the city attorney and city manager as provided for in Title 25 OS 307B1.
move that we go into executive session.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn? Mr. Bumbrick?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes. Initially, I will just need the council